Listen to this.
I want you fucking laughing at. We partners pod, kid. You understand? We in here drinking, singing, swinging, all that shit, dog. We sweating, getting wet, all that stuff.
All right. Welcome to a special episode of the Drinking Partners Quarantine Census Consensus, live from our respective porches, dining rooms, mayoral layers, wherever you may be. I am half of your hosting tandem, Ed Bailey. I'm joined as always with my co-host, Dave Bracey. Say what up to the people.
What's good with you people? We are the Drinking Partners, and if you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. You can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod. Before we get into the thick of things, I just want to send condolences out to the family of George Floyd and those folks that are out there burning shit in Minnesota. Please mask up because it is safe. It's safe for yourself, it's safe for others, and it protects you from facial recognition technology. So please riot responsibly. And this is a message that is condoned by only myself here. I don't want to get any of our participants in trouble. Last time we had one of our guests here became a headline, and we're trying to avoid that this time around.
Wikipedia footnote.
So please riot responsibly, and that is a Drinking Partners message only. Thank you all for joining us. And
Dragon.
Welcome.
All right. So look, it's dragging for me a little bit, but in this time, man, we're all at home. We thought it'd be a great opportunity to do something, to educate. Like in these times, you have to, the best thing you can have is education, is knowledge. And we wanted to bring back a couple of our guests. We have a couple of Drinking Partner vets on here, and we have a new face, familiar to many in the city of Pittsburgh, but a new face. So we have Mayor Marita Garrett here. We have Sara Innamarato, State Rep, 21st District. And we have Gina Winstead, VP of Women in Tech, Pittsburgh. Say what up to the people.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
So as we get into it, so what are y'all drinking on over there? I see there's a bevy of beverages over there.
Sandemann's port wine. They didn't pay me to say that, but one of my favorites.
That's port. Isn't that like strong? That's like the strong wine.
It is.
Like,
so we'll see where we're at
$7.59.
The mayoral.
That's a long day of legislation.
That's Sarah. Better not add another footnote.
I have an icy light mango.
Nice. Representing Pittsburgh.
I really talked trash on this beer for quite some time. And then I had one and I said, this is delightful and the beverage of the summertime.
Yeah, we'll let it pass. It seems to be one of those like beer geek faux pas, like where like, even the beer geeks like it, which is weird. I don't, but I mean, it's respected. It's a respected.
It's one of those
beverage.
like wonderfully terrible things.
Yeah. I like fried bologna, so
Oh!
And there's nothing negative about that. There's nothing negative about
it's fried.
That.
I didn't say raw bologna. I think you heard raw. I said fried bologna. That is
okay. I made some points. I never liked fried bologna.
Never been there.
Sorry.
You have it with cheese. What type of cheese?
It don't matter. I don't know.
You gotta have cheese.
But aren't you supposed to call it gumbo? Like, don't we call it gumbo or something different here?
Jumbo. The jumbo slices.
Gumbo.
Oh, is that a Pittsburgh thing? We call it lunch. We call it the first time mama let you use the stove. That's what we call it where I'm from. There's no real fire hazard involved.
What you doing over there, Gina?
I'm drinking O'Fallon Naughty Pretzel beer. It tastes like you're drinking a pretzel. Pretty good.
Did she just flex on us?
Maybe.
I think that was a flex because I've never.
That was a hard.
You never been there, have you?
Flex.
Ed and Jay, you never been there. She just hit me with the
cam. You wasn't there. She just hit me with the. You wasn't there. Okay. See,
you wasn't with me in the gym. Wow.
You roll out the red carpet for somebody, they come through with the full length mink, stunting on you.
I'll
Okay.
share. I'll
Man,
share. I'm a
This is
share.
technology. We're working it out here.
Yeah, this is we had, so if you want to look at the episodes, we had Marita, you were episode 166. Sarah, you were on 184 along with Summer Lee. It's been a while since we had a chance to check in. So what's going on with you? How are you hanging in these troublesome times?
Well, Sarah, you go first because you're voting right now, right? Like,
Yeah, she on the clock.
Yeah, I think you're never off the clock. So right now we're actually passing a short-term state budget. So all day we've been in and out of caucus, reading through code bills so that the state can continue to operate. And I've submitted all of my bill votes, and then we have our deputy whips who are on the House floor right now voting for us. So it's very, very interesting. We passed a temporary rule about a few months ago that allowed us to remote vote, which is something like they don't have in Congress or even at the federal level, but we're allowed to do at the state house now, which is cool. So it's allowed us to focus on what's going on in our community, and for the amount of gridlock that's been happening in Harrisburg and some what I would dub pretty disgusting behavior very recently. We have seen the spirit of community really embed itself in the community. Like there's just like folks there's a group that started a mutual aid group for restaurant workers. We have buddy systems in all of our neighborhoods. So we're checking in on like older adults who live alone. I have my person, her name's Judy. She's lovely. She checks in on me too, because I live by myself. So I've just really seen the spirit of community and neighborhoodliness come through in this trying time. So do food distributions a couple times a week. So it's been
yeah, I want her to represent me. That was well said. Because I'd have just been like, yo, shit been crazy. That would have been my whole answer.
So, like, did you avoid all that Rona business that was happening over there? Because I heard
were you exposed?
Folks was like Rona on the low.
No, I was not. I know a lot of people were checking in. My friend called me from Singapore this morning and was like, "Are you okay? Were you exposed?" And I was like, "No, I was not. I've been here in 15201 Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for the duration of what's been going on." So,
for the folks that don't know, that listen or whatever, some Republican had the Rona and didn't inform anybody until afterwards. So there was a possible exposure, and
you just told the Republican.
Well, he told
it was
leadership,
definitely.
and then leadership only
didn't trickle down to
everybody. The only people who were informed were a select group of Republicans, and there wasn't transparency and honesty in who was infected and who would potentially have been exposed. So it's really scary for a lot of people who live with their family members who have comorbidities.
I mean, they wiped out the entire, there was a whole genocide of Native Americans from that same behavior. I remember smallpox. You know what I mean? Like that's wild. That's just wild. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible. Hopefully we can get them out of office at some point. But given all the gerrymandering, who knows, right?
That's why the census is important.
Ooh,
yeah, we're gonna get into that.
We're gonna get into it.
Transition. Hold on, we're gonna jump into that. We got to hear from Marita and then Gina real quick. So, Marita, how have you been holding up?
Well, yeah, things have been crazy, but it's like a mixture of that. Definitely making sure that the community's immediate needs are being addressed. So the pre-store, we've become a hub for a lot of different things. Still doing our food distributions. We increased some hours so that we're more accessible to people. in addition to new partnership with 412 Food Rescue, where every Friday, so starting tomorrow, everyone will be we'll have 120 pre-packaged boxes of groceries to distribute every week, at least through the month of June. So hopefully that continues on. But what I will say, I want to say two things. One, it's been great seeing how the communities come together through this and really making sure and checking on those less vulnerable. Yet, it's not over. I know it's 82 degrees. I know it's almost summertime. I know it, y'all. Like, I want to cook out. I want to wear my new jumpsuit, all of those, but don't. We're still in a global pandemic. Chill, wait it out. Your life, your family's life, your friend's life aren't worth it. Believe me, I don't want to be cooped up, but this is what we have to do. So it is not over. I feel like within the past 10 days, people just thought it's a wrap. Summertime, summer 2020. No.
It's
people got fed up.
It's very much alive out there, man. Like, and there's erroneous information. And it sucks because, the leader of the country is walking around admonishing people for wearing masks. So it's a really weird time right now because, like, where do you go for the authoritative voice? Like, what, I mean? Like, I'm an intelligent, well-read individual. And every day I'm hit with 5 different messages from credible sources. So, it's pretty confusing. But if you trust anybody, trust me, and put your mask on. It's just, it ain't, and like, I want to shout out the entertainment industry because a lot of folks have been really, like, they've hunkered down and they said, listen, man, entertainment isn't coming back for a year. So we need to figure out how to move in a different direction. This isn't a stopgap. This isn't like, okay, let's wait it out for a couple of months or weeks. It's, hey, how do we switch our business model so that we can survive over the next year or so until this vaccine comes out? Because as organizers and entertainers or whatever, we're broke and struggling, and we can't afford lawsuits, the kind that, holding a large event where people die afterwards may bring. So we've had to switch up our game and do things like this. So, everybody needs to chip in. I mean, and if you're outside or whatever, I mean, wherever you go, it's probably whack because we ain't put it on. You know what I mean? Ain't none of the event organizers put it on. So you just in there sitting in the backyard with some whack ass family. Yeah, I mean, like, you don't really like them all like that. If not, you wouldn't be paying us to entertain you all the time. So just stay at home until we come back.
Some of them whack ass families is our own families, bro. Like, you got to go to that 8th grade graduation. Mad about that. But yeah, the video conferencing has been, I mean, it's been a heaven send. As we get more, there's more variety in the type of events. I know people have been throwing online comedy shows. People do stuff like this, but we can do things like this where there is some entertainment value, but again, some information, and we can expose you to new individuals doing things in the city, which is a transition into Gina. Again, new to the cast, maybe not new to the city, but just let the people know, about women in tech and what you got going on.
Yeah, so I am the VP of Women in Tech Pittsburgh, but I'm also the Director of Member Engagement and Diversity and Inclusion at the Pittsburgh Technology Council. That's where I've been spending a lot of my COVID-19 time dedicated to the PTC, the Pittsburgh Tech Council. And so just talking about the platforms that we're using now, we're all connected right now on Zoom. We hosted the CIO of Zoom yesterday on our webinar. We've been having digital events every day, just trying to connect to different tech companies and small businesses, making sure that people weren't left behind. But I don't know if everybody does know this, but it's kind of already been announced on the mainstream media, but Zoom is opening an office in Pittsburgh, and they just elected a new, I believe, Director of Diversity and Inclusion. I don't think they're going to be stationed in Pittsburgh, but we're excited to see that because this platform is not necessarily accessible for everybody yet. There's a couple different reasons why not, but that's what I'm working on, trying to make sure that this digital divide is really talked about and make sure that small businesses aren't experiencing the digital divide, as well as students and schools. We put together with Neighborhood Allies and Aurora, which is an autonomous vehicle company, we put together an initiative called Beyond the Laptops to try to get some laptops in the hands of students from underrepresented communities. So there's just so much that we could do right now, especially in tech, because that's the main way that we're connecting is through Zoom, through Facebook Live, through IG Live, through all of these platforms that were kind of ignored before. You know, I used to just have meetings every day, face to face with people, and now the Zoom meeting is your average connection. So it's really just a lot of work to try to make sure that everybody's on here with us. And I'm glad that people are tuning in on Facebook and that we have a few VIP guests here in our Zoom room, the Zoom room.
The Zoom. You got to patent that. I know you on the tech side of things. Now on the business trademark side of things, holla at it.
All right, I'm gonna have to tell Harriet, the CIO of Zoom, the Zoom room.
Oh, Dave, what you pouring up?
Got some of this Log Yard proper notch. It's a double IPA, hazy. Haze boy 8.1. Shout out to Buzzy. Buzzy's a haze boy. It's really good, man. I got this on sale at the beer distributor for like $11 for a 4-pack, and they're usually like $18. So I'm drinking nice but cheap. You know what I mean, it fits into my thrifty lifestyle. You know what I mean, like I look fancy, but I'm just wearing secondhand clothes that were so good that they were bought twice. You see what I'm saying? So shout out to Log Yard for bringing the value and the flavor. They ain't paying me for it. I just really like the beer.
All right, we cap it at 15 seconds, but he went over a little bit. But that'll lead us into why we all gathered here, I guess. So we have these lovely ladies here on the cast to talk about the census. We've all received something in the mail. We've ignored it probably at least once. They send it more than once.
I've
so just talk
it for
about
38 years.
Yeah. I don't even look. I read on the internet last week they do it every 10 years. I was like, I'm not going to remember. 10 years ago, you said? I know I didn't fill that out. But so we're going to discuss, the importance of the census and how tech has plays a part in it now that we don't want to answer the door when people knocking on your door, et cetera. So I guess we can just approach the largest elephant in the room. Why is it important for me to answer these questions? Why do I need to do this census, fill this out? Are they just trying to get my information? Is my old record going to come up? Like what's going to happen?
Well,
I'll just kick it off real quick, but it's confidential. So I'm one of those people, as much as I knock on doors for candidates, other people, I'm still the same. You knock on my door, who is this? What you want? What set you rep? All of that stuff. But
is that a question on there? What set you claim? I gotta draw a blue bandana, like.
Stop it. But no, seriously. And so I'll speak more so on the perspective of how it impacts Black communities, specifically Wilkinsburg. In the 2010 census, Wilkinsburg, along with like McKeesport and some other municipalities in the Mon Valley, we were undercounted. And you can see that directly in the disinvestment of such communities. This affects funding for transportation, infrastructure, when we're all talking about potholes, roads, all of those things. Those funding streams come through, and the census is a huge part of that. So the census really is, if you're not counted, you literally don't count, almost like kind of like voting, but the census even more impactful. And I want to give a big shout out to Faye and Jess Mooney, who've been running the city county census committee and has really been helping to put this information out. And they shared information from a site from Color of Change called Our Count. And it shared that 2010 census, 800,000 Black families and Latino families weren't counted. So that's just what they know for sure. So imagine that, just like say it's probably even twice that. And we see this in our communities. We see this every single day. So that is one of the reasons. And also Dr. Sheila Beasley of the US Census 2020, got my little swag here, water bottle with my port wine. But that's the main reasons I'll share right off the bat why it's important. Sarah?
Yeah, it ends up working out to about $1,700 per person per year. of money lost to your community if you don't fill it out. Because the 16 of the largest Fed programs, that's how they determine how to distribute funds. And like Marita said, that's everything from infrastructure, transportation, it's school lunches, it's healthcare, it's money to hospitals, it's those CDBG monies that, like, I know a lot of folks on here know, that, you know, is money for housing and other community development activities. So it's super important. So if you're like, get that money, right? Get that money back to your community, because it takes 10 minutes. It's, you know, it's super easy. We'll have an example of that later. But really, you know, it's our role as a citizen to make sure that, you know, we're bringing that money back to our communities. It's also really important for representation. So Pennsylvania, after the 2010 census, lost a congressional seat because they're divided amongst, that's how the Electoral College is decided, and that's how congressional seats and all of our House and Senate seats are decided by population count. So those numbers are based off of the census count. So if you undercount a community, that means you have less representation and less opportunity to elect someone who is going to represent your community well. And if you fill it out this year, you get to make history because it's the first time that it's ever been online.
Yeah. And I'll just throw some things into just real quick, because I heard Marita mention my hometown of McKeesport, and it is one of the lowest reported areas for census data. So I think the numbers were anywhere from about 30 to 40% of people in McKeesport filled out their census data. And that's why we can't have nice things. I mean, I know everybody says that, but honestly, there's policies being written right now. And this is why we can't have nice things, because we need to know how many people are represented in the Mon Valley, in McKeesport, in Duquesne, in Clareton, and in all of these areas that are underrepresented and underserved. We've been trying to get transportation to be effective from the Mon Valley to the city downtown Pittsburgh for so many years. And we just can't, because we don't have the data to say, hey, we have XYZ amount of people living here. We need this amount of money, millions of dollars dedicated to building new infrastructure and transportation to go so that we can get downtown to the jobs. So it's a lot of money. In the last census, I think it said that $39 billion were dedicated to the state of Pennsylvania. And then so when we just talk about numbers, it gets really ridiculous. And then I think it's 1.5 trillion federal dollars were spent based off of the census data from 2010. So you can just see, I mean, if you want to have money for nice things, you have to fill out the census. You got to do your part.
So, you know, here's my thing. As a man that doesn't go around using his government name, and in the past have had warrants, you know, my question is, you know, one, if I fill this out, right, and I may not want Johnny Law to know who I am and where I'm living right now, is that going to affect my ability to stay undercover? Because, I mean, it's a real issue, right? Like, we clearly know that society isn't fair for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. So just because you don't want the government to know what you're doing doesn't mean that you're, you know, a criminal in the purest sense, right? And two, they kind of already like have our information, right? Like, I mean, you know, like I've never heard a situation that was like, oh man, he got away because he didn't fill out the census. Like, yeah, I mean, like if they want to come find me as a law-abiding citizen, they can find me, right? So like, why do I have to fill this out? Like you knock on my door when you need that tax money. Why do you need me to like fill out this census?
Well, two things. One, it is against the law for the Census Bureau to share the information with anyone else. So, I mean, that's good too for our undocumented community, and they can feel comfortable filling the census out because it is not going to be shared at all because it is against the law. And it is actually in our Constitution that we must do a count of our country every 10 years. So it's kind of rooted in that history. And how we based a lot of funding for our federal programs on it.
And I think you hit it also, Dave. Like, they already have your information. We're on Zoom right now with our full names, and you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, because I connected with you yesterday. And so if they want to know where you are, they will know where you are. I mean, the government can find you. And platforms like Facebook are sharing data with the federal government, but they're just not basing policy and redistricting off of that data. They might be using that data for other information, but they're not going to base policy off of it.
So when you say data, though, so I say, for example, you said 30 to 40% of McKeesport actually filled out the census, right? So there is data to say that these other 60% didn't fill it out. So why is there some provision, something in there that gives a buffer? Like we know everybody didn't fill it out, or we have some knowledge of the population being more than what is reported, right? We have, school enrollments. You have pay stubs, like they were saying, they'll garnish your wages, like they'll find your bank account, they'll get in there. So they know there's an address on your pay stub, like they know where you are. Like we have this information, sort of, it seems, because you're saying there's a percentage that filled it out. But unless it's filled out, I guess that percentage can't be represented in such. Is there anything to protect those who maybe didn't fill it out, or you just SOL?
I mean, it's
totally SOL.
partly having good state leadership, but the issue is, just like Sarah said, we lost a Congress seat because of that. So could you imagine the difference, us having another Congress seat, especially federally? So it's kind of tied in. Like, thankfully, Wilkinsburg, we have a great state senator in Jay Costa, who's really been an advocate so that we get a lot of funding that goes towards some of these capital projects, infrastructure, so that we haven't necessarily felt that, direct brunt of being undercounted. But again, it depends on leadership. Not every municipality has that benefit. And so that's where, to me, the census almost aligns with voting. So for voting, our turnout in the county is always low. We know that there's how many ever, Gina, Sarah could fact check me, but there's like over 500,000 registered voters in the county. But we know only 19 to 22% show up on an average year. So it's almost saying that that certain percentage, and everyone has their own reasonings, but people just generalize that they're not going to be a part of the civic process or duty. So why does their vote matter? So again, it goes back to representation. Yep. We have to do it. Also, something else I want to add, because before the citizenship question for the census was thrown out by the courts, people were saying to those who didn't feel comfortable, you don't have to, or how can I phrase it? Turning in your census, it doesn't have to be fully complete for it to count. Obviously, we want every single question completed, but if there is something on there that you absolutely feel you're not comfortable answering, okay, still turn it in, because it still can count that household, it can still count your demographic and other things, but just turn it in.
Yeah, and just also, they're collecting this data, but they don't have accurate data, and we get to self-report with what our ethnicities are, what our household relationships are. This is one of the first years where you can report if you're in a same-sex relationship. And these are the ways that our civil rights are being built right now. So if we know that there are XYZ same-sex couples in a neighborhood or in this area, this district, laws and legislations and equal opportunities are going to be based off of the data that's collected from this census. If we know that there are XYZ Black Americans in this neighborhood, and we know that that they need opportunities, this is how it's being pulled. And you don't want inaccurate data anyway. So the things that they're pulling aren't accurate and they're not self-reported. And I am excited and happy that they're allowing you to kind of self-identify racially and your orientation this year as opposed to other years. I think this might be one of the first years for that same-sex question. So, I live with a same-sex partner right now, and I was never counted. No one never knew. We don't have a great understanding of where the LGBTQ community stands in America. And so this will give us a better understanding of who they are, where they live, and why their voice matters, and why their voice is louder than we're ever estimating in the past.
So if I want a bunch of money for my community, why don't I just say there's 100 people living here?
Building codes.
Fraud? I don't know.
That part. Occupancy permits, building codes, we know.
Allegheny County assessment shows that is a 3-bedroom, sir.
Right.
Trying to get your landlord in trouble?
I know,
That's
right?
it. listen, I've lived in some dodgy situations where, I mean, it might have been, I've lived on some couches here and there in my past or whatever, but like, I'm just like what stops fraud from happening? Because again, like you're talking about redistricting and like, I don't know if anybody's listened to this podcast before or whatever, but like, fuck Trump and the red guys or whatever. And it's like, when it comes to gerrymandering, they are the kings of that shit. So like, if you're talking about redistricting an area and trying to get more, because I know like they're over there counting prisoners as voters and citizens in certain areas in order to pad the numbers in their areas or whatever. And these prisons typically are in red areas, right? So they get more shit. So I know that they're doing wild, foul shit over there on the other side. So like how is there a way that the census kind of like checks and sees if there's, do they call somebody and be like, bruh, like, 100 people in your crib? Like,
I think they could send someone to your house. I think they would send a census enumerator, which is the census counter, to come and investigate if something like that came up.
Yeah.
What's
so
his
with
or her
Corona,
power?
I don't know if they can.
Like, can I say, no, you can't come in?
Yeah, you can.
What if I just set up like 13 pallets on the floor? Like, you just go to your aunt's crib and they just put the pillow and the blanket on the floor.
Get a bunch of pillows, throw a blanket on it. Like, that's all them over there. They got to work at Lowe's later.
You bring up two good points, though. Like what Gina said is that they'd probably send an enumerator. It would take some sort of like really concerted, coordinated effort to try to do that. But you did touch on two things that I want to highlight. One is that, regardless of how you're living, right? Like I've also been housing insecure in my life. Like it is like, who is living in your home right now? Mm-hmm. Because it does give us a count of like, a better count of homelessness, right? Because we often talk about homelessness of people like living under a bridge, but there's homelessness that involves housing insecurity and just being like, I'm bopping around, I'm on different people's couches, and we need to recognize that as well. And the second one is you brought up prison gerrymandering, which is what is a topic of conversation that I wasn't aware of until actually we were planning for this census, which is when, like you said, the jailed populations are counted not by where they came from or where their home would be upon their release, or where they came from and where their family is and where their roots are, but rather where they are physically in that space. So it does concentrate a lot of folks. And Pennsylvania does allow folks with a record to vote, which is a positive thing, but we do not allow people to vote while they're incarcerated. So, it's not, we're counting them as like a means to draw political lines, but we're not giving them the right to exercise.
So, in a sense then, in that situation, like everybody that's in that area that votes, their vote is more or less more heavily weighted then, right? Because they're voting for not only themselves, but partially that prison population that's being counted.
Yeah. You're right. Like that's our House district seats. I don't know all of the ratios, but I know like House districts were 60,000 to 1. So whenever the lines are redrawn, they're going to draw them in a way that tries to put as close to 60,000 people in there as possible. So if they draw a line around a prison, whether it's public or private, that count at that time is going to be included in that particular district.
So I got the census in the mail. I thought it was a paper. I was going to fill it out or whatever, but it ended up being online. And I know, Gina, you were saying how McKeesport, and there was a percentage of folks who weren't, being counted or whatever. Where does that digital divide come in that? Because so I was born in McKeesport Hospital. Just want to say that very proudly.
Okay.
But I got family out there, and I know the area, and I know that internet access isn't always a thing that people have. So, like how does that impact folks? And then, what are ways that, say somebody, an area like McKeesport, I'm sure there's McKeesports all across the country or whatever. Like, how do people who are, don't have that access to the internet, fill this census out and make their voices heard?
Yeah. So first, you received a paper that directed you to fill it out online day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So before they sent you that, they definitely sent you a paper application. I have a whole stack here because I'm a slacker. And a lot of, and I have two people in my
student
household.
loan bills and
Right. So I've got this like hefty, and I counted it. It's over 20 pages of wasted trees that they sent to me to fill out my census information. And I just did mine last night too. But they will send you a paper census, and there are going to be people who still fill out the census via paper and via phone. But this is the first year ever that they are doing the census online. So you're getting this document that gives you an authorization code that you have to enter when you go to the website. And I don't know if you're going to do this live day, but you did promise us that you were going to fill out your online census while we were on this podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna be all in your business.
I'm in it now. Like,
okay.
I mean, I got a couple questions in, and
okay.
like I said, it asked me how many people was in there. It asked for all the names.
Yeah.
Again, which made me kind of nervous because again, I don't like telling the government shit. Like, I come from a place where, shut the fuck up, right? So, like, this is very nerve-wracking for me right now. I'm not in a place of comfort.
Well, we're all here to hold your hand.
Support you.
You got moral support.
Yes.
I'm not. Listen, I'm not standing tall for any felonies that come up from this day. Like,
you guys are over here talking about frauding the government.
Not drinking partners don't do that. But before we jump into that, I do want to ask, because as Dave was like, when you look at it and it starts asking those questions, you do get tense. And Sarah, you said, the information isn't shared. But then when you look into it, it says that the information, I guess, helps businesses and they know who's in the, the population, et cetera. So to some extent, it is shared, right? Like what exactly? Because, when you apply for a credit card, it has those disclosures and it says who your information can and will be shared with. On the census, who is it that it's not just the census team? I mean, I don't believe it. Maybe that is the case, but I don't think most of the population believe that information is just collected, it's looked at, and then it's just used specifically for redistricting, et cetera. So, like, who exactly gets their hands on this information?
I mean, that's a good thing. And maybe, I don't know if Faye Jess, who represents Census Count, but it almost kind of goes towards what Gina said, is that your information's out there anyway. I'm always getting mailers from something somewhere, and I doubt they just pulled that from me doing the census. But for me, how I'm able to utilize the census counts, and I don't see everyone who participated in doing the census. So as an elected official, I can't tell you who didn't participate and who did. I just know, okay, for example, according to the 2010 census, Wilkinsburg has 15,930 residents. I believe it's way more, just from being out in the community, knocking on door. I mean, just being out in the community.
Y'all got big families out there.
Yeah. So I'm like, just off the general purpose, I know we got more than 16,000 people, but I can only say our population is this much because that's who's reported. And I can only go by those demographics of those self-reporting. So again, there's a whole subset. There could be another 10, 12,000 constituents I don't even know we have because they didn't get counted in the 2010 census.
And sorry, I kind of lagged on that because I was deciding which beer to drink next.
We ain't mad at that. We're mad at that at all. Okay,
This is a redeeming. This is Sarah redeeming her beer selection.
I know. Sorry, I had to lead with the Icy Light Mango. I wish I was drinking the All Together beer, which is the one that supports restaurant workers. It's being brewed by Dancing Gnome and Hitchhiker, and
I got that in my fridge. I should have drank that today.
Yeah, I mean, promo portion of that does go to help service workers in the region.
Wait, Jess did put in the chat. Jess Mooney put in the chat. Census data is made public in aggregate numbers. They will not be able to identify individual people.
Exactly. So yes, that was going to be my point. And then for me, it's really important in understanding again, who I represent. My district is around 60,000 people. I have now almost 10-year-old census data that I'm going off of. But it's interesting to see how things change. And they do these what's called community surveys, where they get a little bit more in depth on seeing and this is like something you don't self-report. This is just more like analyses that come in between the census collection, where it tells you, you know, like poverty level and racial makeup and employment by sector and different things. And that information is so helpful. For example, what surprised me in my district is that 60% of folks are renters. And so when I'm talking about how to prioritize our funding and our relief, I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that with this high level of unemployment that we get renting relief to people, because that's going to hit our folks really hard where we live. So, you know, it helps give you that insight. And it's all skinned, right? Like it's not, you know, there's no personal data attached to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because they asked like, you know, rent or own and who's renting, who's owning and all that. And I'm like, what you need that for? You know what I mean? Like the bills is
what if it's
paid.
A fluid situation? Wife, I'm waiting to my tax return. Wifey told me when I get my tax return, I'm going to give it a $6,000. Yeah. She's going to put me on the deed.
I mean, like why you need to know our situation over here. You know what I mean? Like,
we working through some things.
So the census does ask those questions, though. It asks if you basically have couch surfers that have come through your house. You know, that buddy that crashes in your house. Do you have someone who's in and out of the prison system who's in your house? Those questions are asked, and you will be able to input their information so everybody is actually counted, whether they just came in for a month or two or if they're consistently there.
So this is clearly not a woke census, which you had mentioned before, because it's asking me about my sex, and I got two choices here.
Yeah, I'll talk on that for a minute. Can I talk on that for a second?
Okay.
Oh, please.
Okay. That ain't mine.
Yeah, I'll talk on that as the diversity and inclusion person here, and also someone who is experiencing some conflict with filling out that part of the census. I did the census last night. I did it physically on the paper, and then I did it digitally online. And the reason it took me as long as it did is because I didn't know how to fill out the information for my partner. My partner is non-binary, meaning they don't fall within male or female gender identities, and it's somewhere in between. And there's really no opportunity for them to be represented or counted. And right now, the census is only counting you as your biological birth gender. So I had to identify them as female. But it's something that I think we really, like you said, it's not a woke census. We're not counting people, but there's also the fear of what does that interpret to legislation and for that person and their security and safety going forward, because we live in a nation where we don't have protections for gender identity or sexual orientation in the workplace. So people are just afraid of how this data is going to be used. But it can really tie you up. But if you are filling out that census data right now, and if you're a person who falls on the gender spectrum of not traditional male or female, you do have to fill it out as your biological sex. And I just wanted to put that out there so people know. But then whenever you get into the question of how your partners are related to you that live in your household, you have a little bit more leeway to be represented as a queer LGBTQ individual. And that's how I had to answer. It was difficult, but yeah, it's weird. And even in the past, this is one of the, I think maybe the second time they're allowing people to identify as more than one race. So as a biracial American, it was also important for me to be able to identify myself with my full racial identity as Black and Italian, and somehow 23% German according to Ancestry DNA. But yeah, those things are important. They matter to you as who you are authentically. And the more that we can get data around that, I think the more legislation we'll see that provides more protections and civil rights for people going down the road.
Nice. Why is it always like this Hispanic question? Like they really want to know how many people are Hispanic or not Hispanic.
There's only 4 types of people, man: Black, white, Asian, Hispanic.
But they be like, are you Hispanic, or you white Hispanic, or you Black?
Cameron Diaz Hispanic?
There's so many levels of Latino and Hispanic. Why are they so focused on Latin America?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, but they must have went to Pitt too. They must have gone to Pitt because when you say you black, they was like, "Are you African American or are you Nigerian?" Like, we know the two was different. It's like, okay, I see how you well played, Census. Well played. But so to go to Gina's point, though, we have this fluid identity here within this country. How do we affect like the questions that will show up in the census 10 years from now? Like, I know obviously answer one is complete the census, be as thorough as possible. But, how do we include, a selection for someone who is non-binary is the term, like someone who says they're non-binary? Like, how do we, because they want to be represented. Like, is there somewhere we can write? Is it something we could do to get that on there? Do you check like a blank box and be like, this is what I am? Like, how do you do that?
It has some other race on here, which is, it sounds offensive.
No.
What are you? This or some other race? Like, I mean,
I'm not putting my address and other. No. No, you showing up.
Well, Gina, you had kind of said in the part where you were able to identify your relation to those living in the household and that you were able to mention that. So what I'm kind of thinking is maybe they'll take that and then maybe do a deeper dive. Okay, how many do identify as non-binary? How many may identify as that way, to really start breaking down, okay, these are what we need to include. And I think just, part of discussions, just like we're doing right now, continuing the discussions on, yes, complete the census, yet we can continue to be advocates of it being more inclusive and accounting for things that it doesn't right now.
Here's what I found interesting is that Lebanese and Egyptians are considered white, apparently.
I saw that too. Yeah.
Egyptians are
they've been trying to steal Egyptians for a while, bro.
All Northeast Africa would look like they were counted as white.
Wild. That's wild.
That's a whole Africana studies class right there. Shout out to Professor Kwame.
Professor Kwame.
Right, remember he
held the pit. Okay.
I had a different one. I had Baba Musawa was my African studies at Pitt.
That name right there. I'm not gonna pass that class. I'm not gonna pass Africana.
Oh yeah, I got an A.
Your name is. Yeah, I'm sitting there intimidated. It's me sitting next to the Nigerian. You know what I'm saying? He's mad at me because I don't know the answers. I want to know what's on Dave's census. You getting extra questions. Am I just too regular black? My census was like 4 questions.
Bro, you ain't, but that's the thing. Even when it says black, it has like a bunch of different blacks on there. So like, and that's what's wild because most black people don't know what kind of black they is. Like, I don't know what kind of black I am. Like,
I know what type of black you are when you say black they is.
Right.
You have outed yourself.
but they ain't got as black as they is as an option. Yeah.
That would be dope. What if they changed it to make you feel more comfortable with answering questions? Like that would black they is. And I would check that. I would definitely check that.
Is you as black as they is? Yes. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So, hold on. I think we got some questions there.
It says I'm kind of done filling out the census right now because it asked me to fill out for 4 different people, so we'd be here forever. Try just
Did
to
you
get
pass?
through the 4 to them and then get to the rest of the questions. But I mean, are there questions?
We have one here in the chat. Are there any ideas on addressing the mistrust people have with filling out the census? So I guess just what other ways, what other forms of outreach are on the table, I guess, for people who are like, you know what, I ain't touching.
You're doing the outreach.
Yes, we are the outreach.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, we're all here. We're all represented. That data is actually protected for 72 years. I'm not sure why that number, but your information is protected for 72 years, which means they can't use that against you for anything. And it's only going to be used for what the census was outlined to be intended for. I think there are still going to be people who are afraid to answer the census, but literally there aren't identifiable data that's linked to you. So you're putting your phone number if you want to, and your date of birth and your name. That stuff is out there already. It's out there. So you might as well use it in a way that's beneficial.
Yeah, and I think it means that it's not just coming from the government, the faceless government. It needs to come from your neighbors. It needs to come from trusted sources. And I think, we had a really great census plan that involved community leaders going out at different events that were happening throughout the summer, and all of that got squashed because of COVID. So I think right now we're really in a state where we're rethinking what it looks like to engage people virtually and try to build that trust. But I think it really comes from making sure that you're talking to your neighbor about it, and making sure that, your elected officials are there to kind of like depoliticize it, because it shouldn't be politicized. It's just about making sure that you have representation, making sure that your neighborhood gets the money it needs to be able to operate and serve the people who are there.
I like this. Can the census start showing memes like Facebook, so people just turn over all their data? So yeah, I mean,
make it a BuzzFeed quiz.
They don't make
Harry
it
Potter character are you?
Yo, nah.
What house would you be sorted into?
Yeah.
Everyone would fill it out.
Yeah,
Okay, Sarah. Yes.
That's already
Star
happened.
Wars
We just
character?
don't know it's happened.
Yeah, right.
I keep getting these healthcare phone calls. I'm like, fam, I done had coverage
Me
for about
too.
15 years.
Global pandemic would at least stop them.
Yo,
It's like when you buy a
telemarketers
house, they
are
start sending you all types of stuff.
Yeah.
telemarketers are winning.
Yep.
They're the only
yeah.
people that did not get affected. They didn't get laid off. They probably got boosts or whatever. My phone has been blowing up
They
for the last
essential.
2 months, bruh. And they can work from
They
home.
are
are
hiring.
essential.
They're hiring a ton. All of the tech companies that have phone centers are hiring a lot of people right now.
That's what all the models are going to, figuring out how we can do this from home, how we can do it digitally, because then the businesses reduce their overhead as far as brick and mortar, because you got rent, lease, you got utilities, you got insurance. They can eliminate all of that. We do have a question. Why should our most vulnerable populations care about this right now? We know how much they're dealing with, especially during COVID-19. So why should people who, are concerned with their health, why should they be concerned with the census currently?
Well, right now, I mean, Pennsylvania got $3.9 billion from the CARES Act that passed. And that was largely based on our population. And so when we think about especially the vulnerable communities, especially the folks that have been pushed on the margins, especially the folks that have been left behind, like, it's so important for them to take the 10 minutes to fill this out. They can go to pa.gov/census. They have a Spanish version and, other outreach tools there. And, that way folks can get the money to help, better build up their communities. And we need to know that information in order to do that. That's just the way it works right now. So especially in a time of crisis, it's so important to be counted so that you can receive the money that is owed to you and your community from the federal government.
I think we're seeing right now how coronavirus is really interrupting education for a lot of underserved communities. So we see that school districts just aren't funded properly. We're seeing that no one is caring about the people who don't have access to broadband and Wi-Fi and internet. And we're seeing the importance to make sure that funding is allocated to people who need it. And I think that's why the census is so important. Just to go back a little bit, I feel like I didn't answer the question on the digital divide, but it's something that's really serious, not just because people can't get online to take the census, they can't log on to their computers, but there's a three-pronged issue with the digital divide right now. And right now we're having an issue with people not having a device that's a laptop or a desktop computer, because your cell phone really doesn't count. You can't get on your cell phone to do an essay and do a paper or to really apply for most jobs. The third thing is that there's not access to broadband Wi-Fi, high-speed internet. And the last thing is that there's a lack of digital literacy and skills. And so we can use the data that we get from the census and allocate some funding to programs that are going to educate communities that are underserved, where there's not an overlap of broadband and access to education and access to money or financial opportunities. This is something that's really pervasive in our communities right now. And the reason that the digital divide happened in the first place is because of we'll just talk about it, systemic racism and structural barriers and structural racism that exists. We only have one or two options for internet in the first place in our region. So there's not competition. There's not a reason to lower prices. We don't have like the Metro PCS of broadband available. We have some opportunities for companies to step up and to act in a civil and social responsible way, which organizations or companies like Comcast have done. Comcast is offering free Wi-Fi for families that are eligible financially for 2 months. And then it's $9.95, I think, going forward. But there's opportunities for companies to step up and to demonstrate that they really care about the digital divide and that they care about connecting people to this access. So there's a lot of solutions we could talk about, but yeah.
So couple of things, couple of the quotables here. 10 questions, 10 minutes. Will decide 10 years of funding for your communities. That's a very good line there. I like that.
That's a hell of a pickup line.
That is. I'm gonna go to I'm about to go to the bar and just be like, hey, baby.
Hey, chill. Don't incriminate yourself, bro. You just filled out your census, dog. We don't want to have to send an amendment
with the mortgage in there too. And then let me see. Where else are we at over here? Every person counts. Like every penny counts. I like that. I don't know how Native Americans feel being compared to red pennies, but you should still fill out that form either way.
Yo,
shout out to
Abe.
Census? Shout out to Abe. He was a good white dude. He was a decent white. He was all right. He was passable. Yeah, I mean, he had some things about him, but he was passable.
Were Native Americans on the census?
Yeah, he on a penny. He on a penny. He turned his back on all the other presidents, right? And then here's a question: is the digital divide the modern version of redlining? Ooh.
Feel like that.
It does, along with philanthropic organizations, but that's a whole other call. So.
No, it definitely is. It cuts you off to access, we talked about. The structural racism, it's a way to keep you out of financial literacy. It's a way to keep you out of the loophole for jobs. I mean, you can't apply for a job without applying online. You go to Target, they tell you to apply on the internet. They tell you to go home and apply on the internet. So yeah, this is keeping people out of opportunities, most definitely. And it's keeping school districts. There are some school districts who cannot operate at all because they have several students who aren't online. So if you can't have everybody online, you can't have a single student getting online education. So yeah, I mean, it's affecting our education. It's affecting our economic status. It's affecting every aspect of your life, especially if you're in an underserved community.
And Scott just made a really great point. He said, imagine if you had to work from home with no digital access right now. So, I mean, even that in itself, it shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a right for everyone, internet access. But this is, look at people who have Wi-Fi routers. Okay, so I get to stay home. Now someone's trying to figure out, wait, usually I go to the libraries to use the internet. Well, the library is closed. Or, all of these different things. So, Absolutely. And even I think we see with PPS and some of the local school districts here, they had to go to pass fail because not everyone, or I think they actually didn't even grade because not everyone was on the same playing field. So you can't, grade equitably when you have a large proportion of students who don't have internet or wireless access.
Yeah, they identified, I believe, 800 families in the PPS system who didn't have access to internet or reliable access to internet.
Yeah.
So that is, and from a state perspective, yes, this impacts urban communities, but it also impacts very rural communities as well. We have not invested in our public sphere for quite some time. So that means that we have not invested in public infrastructure. So we haven't been able to build out a robust broadband network. And, Gina, you touched on this, is that you don't have a lot of choice. So you don't have, when we create monopolies, we're kind of stuck with what we're given as opposed to actually spurring innovation and making sure that everyone actually has a right to be connected. Because as of now, the internet should be treated like a public utility. It needs to be something that you have access to be able to
in the PPP?
Live, learn, work, and connect with others.
And honestly, there's a lot of focus right now on the digital divide and how it affects rural communities. And that is definitely a problem, and I feel for them. But it's 50%, over 50% of the people who do not have access to broadband are people of color, and they're not living in rural communities. They're living in your cities. They're living above you. They're living in apartments. They're living in areas where they just literally can't afford it. They can't pass a credit check to get internet, and they can't maintain the monthly fees. And once you're ineligible for the $9.95 plan from Comcast, your internet price goes up exponentially to about $70 a month. So that gap. So if you're not you're not living in poverty, you might be the working poor, and you're just too poor to afford Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So I know we had a couple of questions in the chat here, just centering around rehashing. So for individuals who don't have internet access or cannot get to it in time, what options do they have to fill out the census, one? And two, for Gina more specifically, what sort of initiatives are out there as we go more digital, as it's incumbent upon all of us to educate ourselves? What options do we have for those who just are not computer literate at this point?
Yeah. So you can still fill out your census via the phone and via everybody should have gotten something in the mail to them. But if you don't have internet at home, there are a few things you can do. So Comcast did open up all of their hotspots, all of their Wi-Fi, that if there's a public Wi-Fi community, which there are 19 million of them right now in the United States, you can go sit in Nova Place, or you can go sit somewhere where it shows up and says Xfinity is available here. You can log on for free and use those. So there's 19 million Wi-Fi spots right now just through Xfinity that you can use. And then you could also take advantage of their 2 free months if you apply before June 30th through Comcast to get internet that way. But there are other things that people are doing. There are things that are happening in rural communities and in cities. There are digital hotspots that are being attached to public transportation, to school buses, to city buses that are sitting idle, where you can have a station where you just go in. And some of this is just ideas. Some of this is things that I think we could put together. I think we could put together some of the companies who are providing Wi-Fi and broadband and the capability to turn internet that's internally in buildings. So there's a company called Worldwide Technologies, and they can turn the internet that is inside of a high school or a grade school and then beam it out into the parking lot so that same service is being provided to people, yet they don't have to be in the confines of a school. So there's that idea. There's a ton of things that people are doing. There's the idea of just making Wi-Fi free to the whole entire city, which is expensive and actually relies on people in their homes opening up their Wi-Fi service to strangers and other people. So instead of roaming and then hopping in and off of Wi-Fi, it would just straight stream if you're walking down the street because everybody's Wi-Fi is open and available. There are just tons of different ideas we can do. And we could look at models of other cities. I think Taiwan has free Wi-Fi in the whole entire city. Nationally, internationally, there are tons of people that are doing it. So it's possible. It does take a strong financial commitment, but in the short term of things, I recommend people contact their local broadband provider, see what they have available for free until June 30th. If that doesn't work, find a common area, a park, someplace like Nova Place. I just know that because our office is over there, but they have open Wi-Fi right now that you can use, and you can go and fill out your census in that type of way.
Shout out to Allentown. MetaMesh is up there. I heard.
Yeah, MetaMesh. Yeah, MetaMesh is launching some new things. I heard too. They're working with the community. And then as far as the literacy part, Ed, I think you asked about whether people have Wi-Fi and broadband already. What if they don't know how to use the internet? There are organizations like Remake Learning and Neighborhood Allies who are doing the work to connect with nonprofits and community organizations to provide literacy classes. Computer Reach is the one that's actually providing the refurbished computers, and then they partner with different organizations to provide education. So if you have a grandma or someone who's fresh out and they don't know how to use the internet, we can connect them to different resources that are available because there's a lot of people that just can't get on. That's the third leg that's really lagging is digital literacy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I want to connect. I would love to talk to you more about that program because I was just meeting with ARP and Age Friendly, and we were talking about this very problem because we were talking about it in terms of like filling out the census, but then also telehealth and just older adults who live by themselves and how do they connect with family members or with other people in their community if they're not allowed to leave their homes.
Yeah, there are
things like that.
Definitely. There are some virtual senior centers for homebound seniors that the city has worked with and other organizations. So I'd love to share that.
Great.
Also, your public libraries. I know we're wrapping up, but public libraries, Wilkinsburg Public Library has done a great job of rerouting. So if you're in the vicinity, we have 2 branches. If you're in the vicinity, you can connect onto their Wi-Fi. They also have wireless printing. So if there's documents you need printed without having to come into the library, they'll have it in the vestibule for you. And it's just the staff who sees that as well. So really also utilizing your public libraries as well.
I think we we're hitting that point. A little long, whatever. We're going to get all the information to everybody get in contact with you and all that. And like, we'll post this and this and the other. But before we go, I need to know, what is your favorite forms of potatoes? I need it. I need to know what your favorite forms of potatoes are. It's a very underrated gourd. Everybody eats it. They eat it almost daily, but nobody loves it. So I need to know, what's your favorite form of potato?
Is vodka?
Vodka is a potato. It is. It's one of the best.
Got it.
Yes, it is.
Yo, that potato vodka, that John. Woo.
That's a different night.
That's that moonshine. That's that shine.
Shout out to Penn State. First time ever had like real potato vodka up at Penn State. They used to have the little Mardi Gras John at the skate rink. It was crazy. I don't remember anything outside of drinking in my man's car.
You could take
the car was stationary. It was stationary. We was already parked, and somebody poured out the potato vodka. Next thing I know,
you could taste the starch on that, man. It's a hearty vodka.
No, it's a serious. You feel it all the way down. So,
Marita, I see you. What's your favorite form of potato?
I can't choose. I don't think that's right.
You got to. You don't have. There's got to be something that, like, you
Does
just
sweet
be
potato
like,
count? Sweet potato pie.
It's a potato. Yeah, it is.
Sweet potato, French fries,
you like Jamie
baked potato.
So sweet potato. up there. What is your sweet potato? Is that a sweet
Really
potato fries? Is that a sweet potato
Sometimes
pie?
they get too salty, Etha. I'm sorry, side conversation.
No, go ahead.
No, we can't. We went over. I can't. But yeah, sweet potato pie all day, every day.
Ooh.
And then
Nice.
the rest, boom, boom.
Nice. I think that's our first sweet potato pie answer, which I
was
feel a little
actually- that was
embarrassed
our
about
first.
having, 2 Black hosts here. But yeah.
I didn't have sweet potato pie till I was like 23, bro. I ain't even gonna lie to you.
So did you just skip
And then
over
late.
it at Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Yes.
Like what happened?
Every
You
time.
just
Why? Was it a text?
I'm late. I'm late on. Well, let me explain.
and they let
something.
you?
I'm late on sweet potato pie It took me a long time to eat potato salad. I didn't understand how sweet potatoes turned into pie or potatoes turned into salad. I didn't get it. It doesn't make sense. It still doesn't.
Okay.
I'm not against either of the two. I really like them both, but it took me a long time. And I still don't eat watermelon.
I was about to say, this man don't eat watermelon, so you should start with that before you start getting into sweet potato pies.
Ohio, Summit County.
Cleveland all day, and I'm on my census. I put the Cocopreneur on there. I'm stamp certified, baby.
Okay.
I'm Nubian out here.
Woo! And they let you, Scott said, and they let you.
Sarah, what's your favorite form of potato?
I like the ones that I can like DIY at my home. So I like to slice them up, coat them with a bunch of oil, garlic powder, paprika, some salt, toss them in the oven, and you have some oven French fries. And then they're just a great vehicle for sauce, which is like why I love potatoes. I love the sauces.
I mean, they're a great vehicle for flavor, right? It's like bread. It's like all those things.
Yes.
But bread gets all kind of love. Everybody's like, "Oh man, I love this bread." Nobody's like, "Oh man, I love this potato." You know what I mean? Like you don't think about it like that.
This bread. Ain't nobody ever say I love this bread.
Wait, rolls at Texas Roadhouse, and what is it? The Cheesecake Factory bread,
and them cheddar biscuits.
You talking about Red Lobster?
Yeah,
that's a whole
biscuits, but no, Cheesecake Factory has that bread.
I love a good sourdough.
Listen.
I don't recommend the seafood from Red Lobster, just to be clear. But go there and order the biscuits and leave.
Okay, pierogies, true. I'm sorry. Okay, that's
we forgot pierogies.
Okay, way to bring it back, La.
That's a very Pittsburgh thing.
That's very Pittsburgh.
Pierogies, that's extremely Burgish of you. All right, so before we go, let's get all of your individual contact information as far as how people can reach out to you if they have questions regarding the census and or technology. Don't be reaching out and slide the DMs. Just ask them of these prominent women on this podcast. I don't want to be responsible for nothing crazy. And then we do need someone to just run down how everyone can fill out the census before we go here, so everyone has the knowledge to do so. So Marita, we'll start with you.
Okay, you guys can find me Facebook, Mayor Marita Garrett, the official mayoral page. I'm not big on adding anybody as a friend on the personal page, but if I don't ask me about Wilkinsburg stuff on the personal page. That's where the mayoral one is. And I don't do Facebook Messenger. So please email me, mgarrett@wilkinsburgpa.gov. You can even go to my website, maritagarrett.com, contact me. Those are the best ways. Filling out the census, 2020 census.gov. If you still have some more questions before you fill it out, again, paper and online options. And I believe I'm going to check the chat, but it has been extended to October 31st, the deadline to complete it due to COVID-19. Jess or Faye, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's October 31st is the new deadline. But don't wait till then. Don't wait.
Sarah, where can they find you?
Well, like Marita, I'm pretty bad at answering Facebook messages. So I am on Sara G. Innamarato is my like public facing page. If you come at me on your political views on my personal page, I will probably not respond. I'm like, this is for like dumb memes and like those like picto math problems, which I'm very into. Quarantine. Really loved algebra in school. So I am on Facebook, or you can go to our webpage, which is sarahforpa.com or sarah@sarahforpa.com. And I would say if you're looking for any Pennsylvania specific census initiatives, it's pa.gov/census, and it has all the links to the federal sites, as well as what we're doing within our state to make sure that everyone gets counted.
All right, and Gina, we'll round it out with you.
Yeah, so I also am a hermit and I like to not be found sometimes, but if you're looking for me, you can find me on my Facebook, which is Gina Estelle. So that's Gina and then Estelle. And that's also my Twitter handle is at Gina Estelle. Most of my social media is that. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm one of, I think, the only Gina Winsteads on there. So that's GinaWinstead. And that's probably the best way to reach me is to send me a DM on Twitter or LinkedIn, something like that.
All right, Day, let the people know where they can find us.
If you're looking for us, you can find us on epicastnetwork.com/partnerspod. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. And you can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod.
Hey, listen, we want to thank our guests today, Marita Garrett, Sara Innamarato, Gina Winstead for coming through, dropping knowledge on the census. Make sure if you haven't filled it out, you go fill it out. Don't wait till October 31st like I will, just because she told me it's an option. But it's important.
Why we can't nice things?
You said it.
Why we can't nice things? Like,
it's out there. I told people not to. Do as I say, not as I do. We want to thank you all, so make sure you use it. It's really nice to be able to touch and speak to, representatives of the people via internet or just, it's really good to be able to talk to y'all, get the information directly from you. I feel better about filling out the census now because a lot of people are concerned. A lot of people don't know what the purpose is. They don't know if their information is safe. I think if you were listening here, you should walk away with an understanding that one, let your voice be heard. Let people know where you are, what you need, and a lot of that is through the census. And you are protected. There's no risk in doing so. You're doing your civic duty of sorts by doing so. So let's get the money in the hands of the folks who need it. And these individuals are available via internet, not in their DMs, apparently not in Facebook Messenger or on their personal pages, but they are available to answer questions. Day and I, we're going to keep trying to bring you the content that the city needs, and entertain you. So as always, Drinking Partners is the crew. Epicast is the family. Day has his finger up, so I'm going to let him speak.
Just before we get out of here, man, I wouldn't be me if I didn't just take this opportunity to folks watching right now. Before this all comes out, there is a rally for George Floyd, Liberty Avenue and 6th Street, Saturday at 2:30. If you are around, again, this is a Drinking Partners only endorsement. Don't want to get anybody else in trouble, but I will definitely be down there Saturday.
Don't show up without your mask.
Liberty Avenue and 6th Avenue to let the people know how we feel about the recent events that have been going on and the last 400 years of Black life in America. So if that's something that you guys are interested in at home, join us down there and let people know. Let your voice be heard in ways outside of just voting and donations. So,
the theme of this episode, man.
I guess Drinking Partners is the group.
Yeah, the theme of this episode: let people know you here, man. Let people know what you want, what you need, how you feel. You know what I'm saying? And as always, Drinking Partners is the crew. Epicast is the family, and we out of here.
Epicast.